So today, what we want to really talk about is the first 3 months of 2025, what's happened, what that means for us as talent acquisition and recruitment professionals, what it can mean in the future, and perhaps, hopefully, give us an idea of what to focus on in the next few months. We're going to look at a few things, our key takeaways from Q1, a bit of an industry outlook, some global policies that are shifting, some growth areas for the rest of 2025, a talent outlook, what we're seeing in the market with candidates, and then finally ending with what it is that candidates currently want, what they're looking for, and what's really making them tick. So starting with key takeaways from Q1, I think, where it wasn't quite the bounce back that we all thought we were going to get, we did see a few interesting things happen, didn't we, Vince?
Yeah, we certainly did. And I think the biggest one for me was the sort of slight change in dynamic from a lot of the clinical research companies, the pharma companies. Obviously, we know the political situation and the economy is not great. And I think everyone's just basically sitting there and taking a breath. And I was talking to someone who's an industry leader yesterday who described it as just purely chaotic. You can't plan, you can't do anything. Most companies are sat there, they've won the work, but they've not been allocated the work or they can't get the site yet. So all of those things are causing all of us problems. And I can't see that changing through Q2, although we have seen a slight growth in Q1. So it is starting to happen, but nowhere near where we thought it would be.
I mean, there's a lot of innovation going on in particularly in Q1. We've seen lots of cool things happen, and we've got
Mm.
further with conversations that have been going on over the last few years. So I think, yeah, we've done a lot of talking, we've done a lot of planning, and we've yet to actually pull the starting pistol on making that happen. Obviously, AI integration is always kind of the top of everyone's agenda at the moment. We've seen a lot of that, a lot of different GPT modules coming out of nowhere. We've seen the effect that that's had on things like reg affairs, medcoms. We're seeing some really cool things happening.
Mm.
But one of the big things that we're seeing is a really high demand for exceptionally qualified talent, but a real shortage of that talent. So companies are having to really put an emphasis on their employer brand and strategic hiring to make sure they're getting those really business critical hires, and trying to keep things running lean and mean, basically, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that we're seeing a lot of is, I suppose, the rebalancing of salaries in clinical
Mm.
research, especially where we had the boom period. People are pretty much in some level sort of, so we say CRA with a 2 years experience plus up to sort of four. They're a little bit overpaid, so there's going to be a balance in there. So there's going to be a lot of those types of people out there, having to rethink where they are and what they're doing in their career. We've also seen a lot of skills balancing going on as well,
Mm.
with retraining going on. So yeah, it's been an interesting one. Not what we were expecting, that's for sure.
Absolutely not what we were expecting. So a little bit of an outlook then on life sciences. So last year we saw $23 billion worth of VC investment into biotech, which is really, really cool. And we're starting to see the fruits from that. Early stage hiring is rising. A lot of these startups that started, they're trying to bring people on to get everything going to where it needs to go. And the use of AI again in biopharma particularly, it's up 300% on last year alone. So as I said earlier, we're seeing people putting the building blocks in place. Everyone's getting ready for exceptional growth, but it just isn't happening yet. This year, what we've seen from the pipeline is a big focus on obesity. Obviously, you can't turn around without seeing a news article around one of these GLP-1 drugs, can you? They're absolutely everywhere. We're seeing the same for diabetes, oncology, of course, always the front of everyone's mind, and immunotherapy as well. Really, really busy areas to be in. And a lot of the mergers and acquisitions that we've seen, it's been companies trying to increase their portfolio to cover these kind of four key areas. People are trying to make sure they've got all their bases covered and they can maximize profit and ensure that they can run things how they want to run them. Would you say that's true to what you're seeing as well, Vince?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we're in a difficult situation at the moment. I mean, if you look at the market, the markets are not good. Most people's shares are down. Some are down a lot. Some are just sort of breaking even, and that's again all going back to the geopolitical situation.
Mm.
But what we are seeing is certainly a lot more, as you'd expect, in biotech devices, medtech, etc. All of those areas are going to be growing quite quickly. And the other one, which we've seen a lot of growth, is biometrics. So
Yeah,
biometrics has been
yeah.
really heavily hit. Everyone wants data now. Everyone wants to see what's happening. They want it faster to the fingertips. Because you can't make decisions now without having the right sort of data behind you. So we're seeing a certain change of movement when you're coming into senior management, making those decisions and just sitting and waiting at the moment. So we're in a sort of, everyone's almost taken a deep breath. And again, with some of the biotech companies, they don't know whether to crawl, walk or run. You're just sort of stuck in this, period of not knowing what to do with your investment, whether to take it, whether not to take it, whether to expand or not.
Mm.
That's causing everyone problems as well. So yeah, it's very difficult to actually see what's going to happen.
It is obviously not made easier by the way that policies are shifting across the world at the moment. As I mentioned earlier, we've got new governments in the UK, in Europe, and in America. So it's a really, really difficult time. In Europe, what we're seeing is an overhaul of pharma regulations. They're basically trying to make things run better, faster, more efficient, which is obviously needed, but that's a hell of a lot of work, and it's a really bad time to be doing that work. Of course, we've got new health technology assessment frameworks in place as well now, um, which is good. This is nice because lines in the sand, essentially, they want to make it less difficult for things to happen in European countries. Everyone needs to be on the same page, and stuff just needs to work better because it's an antiquated behemoth trying to do any real device business in Europe because you can move 10 miles to the left and suddenly you've got problems. So it's nice that they're actually taking that seriously and stripping it back to basics, which is how it should be. In the US, we're seeing Medicare drug price negotiations, and the conversations that they're having now are going to come into effect in Q1 2027. And what we have seen so far are rather fantastic savings for users from 38% all the way up to sort of 79. So these conversations will go on for a long time and there'll be ever changing policies and ever shifting things, but it's moving in the right direction. And with the FDA, despite a very odd month last month particularly, they're showing a lot of support for modern clinical trial design, such as things like in silico CMNS trials, computational modeling and simulation trials, because they realize that things need to be more efficient, need to be faster, we need to be able to do more, and we need to be able to do it better. So I'm glad that they've got that sort of viewpoint, which we didn't really expect them to have. What do you think, Vince?
Yeah, well, same thing from what I'm picking up on, and well, with companies changing the way that they're working to actually suit what we're seeing in the market. I think that the changes happen so quickly, it's going to take a number of companies time to sort of calm down and see what this actually means. And I think this is all going to affect what happens in talent acquisition, both locally and globally, depending on what you do, where you do it, and how you do it. And it's all in a state of flux at the minute, really.
Mm. So looking at pharma and biotech specifically, then, as I said earlier, we've got those sort of focus areas that we've been looking at. The use of AI is attracting really heavy investment in biotech, particularly. They realize how quickly they can scale now with AI doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Europe really needs to look at the investment that it's going to get to keep up with the US and China. We've got a far lower GDP allocation to new drugs than those two regions. So if we want to be competitive, we've got to get really savvy with our investment. And I know this is something that we've talked about quite extensively over the last few years, how investment in UK and European pharma and biotech just isn't very good compared to the US. So hopefully it's something that does pick up. Obviously, in the UK, we've been hit really hard by the voluntary scheme for branded medicines pricing access and growth, VPAG. It's at a really, really high rate at the moment, which is 22.9%. Now, when you compare that to Germany, which is at 7%, you can see why people aren't really interested in investing in the UK and making sure that their trials and their drugs are made here. We haven't made it competitive in the slightest, arguably. We've gone the other way. It's almost like we're trying to repel the business for some reason. I'm not sure why. But yeah, maybe I'm not smart enough to understand that. How about you, Vince?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the market spread and the amount of effort the government's putting in to win clinical trials for the whole of Europe, which then leads into obviously those drug launches. France in particular has been really good at doing this. Spain, Portugal, The DAC region has been very good, and Eastern Europe's very good, certainly in a number of different countries. And when you take into account, when we look at the UK alone, the Nordics are putting more money into winning trials and work in pharma than we are in the UK. So very disappointing, but we are winning some. So, hopefully that will keep on. But certainly those bigger areas are going to be very difficult to recruit for. Very difficult to recruit in France at the moment. Very difficult to recruit anywhere near Switzerland at the moment as well, because of everything that's going on. So I think locational preferences, the way that people start to think about where you land and expand, what you're going to be doing, is going to become very important as we move forward over the next sort of 2 quarters.
It will indeed. It will indeed. Something else that's really quite exciting is, the medtech world, medical devices particularly. It's had a booming few years. We're seeing growth in digital health, in diagnostics, and particularly in wearable tech. We're seeing AI and personalized devices really, really rise up and take the crown in terms of the life sciences industry at the moment, because we're looking at a prevention over cure mentality. Consumers have never been more in touch with their health than they are these days. And it's because you've got a watch going, oi, go for a run. You need to do this. You need to, you've been sitting too long. It's telling you how to stay alive. And we've never historically had that. So it's a really exciting time, I think. And we're seeing people take it a lot more seriously because they want to stay healthy as opposed to get better when they're sick, which is really, really cool. However, the tariffs news that everyone's been talking about over the last few weeks, that could halt the projected growth that the US look to have in the device market, because they import a hell of a lot of materials and chips and all sorts from China particularly. And the consumer, they're not likely to want to pay the excess on that. So I'll be interested to see how that goes. How about you?
Yeah, well, the thing for me when I'm looking at what's going on generally in the industry as a whole, it's all around personalized medicine.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where you are or who you are. Most people are more aware now of what they can ask or what they can't do. And I think that will drive the growth. I don't think you can hold it back. I think it's just been held back for a short period of time while things settle down. Again, it's the same thing. It's that chaos that's going on that's causing problems. But I can't see med devices slowing down at all. It's just going to keep growing.
It will. It will. And, the way that regulation is still being written for the first time on some places, it makes it really easy to get into the med devices game, because there are some parts that haven't even been regulated yet. You just do what you want to do, and Bob's your uncle. Clinical research, obviously something that's really close to PharmWeb's heart. We've spent years and years and years being in the middle of this. It's been really interesting, particularly over the last 18 months, to see what's happened in the CRO world. What we're seeing is decentralized trials really picking up. That seems to be where the focus is, which is lovely. Animal testing, obviously, that's something that's been in the news in the last couple of weeks. A couple of the big players in CRO land have been hit by a ban on animal testing, so they're winding down their operations, and that's kind of obviously having an effect. But for the most part, people seem to be welcoming the idea that we're moving forward, we're evolving, we're doing things better. And again, wearable tech, decentralized trials, AI, all of these things are going to make that change even better, because we can hypothetically run trials now in a way that we haven't been able to do in the past. We've had to use mice to see if we could do that. We don't need to do that so much anymore. So it's really interesting. The horizon, the future for clinical trials, as I've just sort of stated, it looks really strong. I'm really optimistic. But you know what? There's new regulations, there's funding hurdles that we need to navigate. A lot of the CROs are saying that this year is going to be kind of staying afloat, modest growth, if anything. But 2026 is going to be clinical research's big year, they believe. You've been speaking to a fair few of the big CROs lately, haven't you, Vince?
Yeah, so they're all running a little bit below where they should be. We're going to see the first quarter's figures coming out from tomorrow onwards over the next 2 weeks. So it'd be interesting to see where people are. But again, we're in their split period, so it's very difficult to see where they are. I was more interested to see that J&J are actually doing really well, because they fluctuate quite a lot anyway, so it doesn't seem to be very much going on there. The biggest one, I think, is the trying to find the right sites for clinical trials, depending on what you're actually doing. And I know that a lot of companies actually won work, and they're still waiting for that to be actually pushed through. And then other companies, that can afford to do so have had a lot of benched employees that they can put onto projects immediately, and that's really paid off for them. I know Archivia in particular have done really well out of that. So again, we'll have to wait and see what the figures are like, but really interesting to us and navigate through where we are at the moment.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting week seeing it in writing how everyone's been doing and what's going on, isn't it?
Mm.
So, the global talent landscape then. Let's talk a little bit about particularly people recruitment and globally what the trends are. So the US at the moment, just over 87,000 roles currently left unfilled. A lot of these are AI roles. They're people who can read the data, break it down, feed it back across different functions. So, it might be a salesperson who knows AI. It might be a medical science liaison who knows AI. It's that kind of role that seems to be really dominating at the moment. In Europe, we're facing a bit of a digital skills gap, much the same sort of thing. In STEM, we have a lot of people who are fantastic scientists, but not so great when it comes to breaking down digital data. So these are skills that people need to learn, and they need to learn really, really quickly. That's true for talent acquisition as well. There's a lot of talk about whether AI is going to take a recruiter's job. And I don't think it is, but I think recruiters have got to get really, really good at using AI as part of the tech stack. In the UK, we're seeing a bit of a regulatory hiring pickup, post Brexit, of course. I say that it was, 10 years ago, but we've only really started quite recently, haven't we? So, yeah, we've realised now that there's new regulation to be written, there's new policies to be drafted. We need to thrive alongside Europe. So when they change things, we need to change it and mirror. So it's quite an interesting time in regulatory affairs in the UK, particularly. But Vince, rest of world, you have been looking at this quite a lot.
Yeah, so if you look at the rest of the world, I mean, the two key ones really, I think obviously EMEA is going to continue to grow. There's a lot of US companies starting to look very strongly at EMEA now rather than just being in the US. We've got LATAM that's growing, especially out of Mexico, which is really taking the lead there. Africa is starting to grow as well, based out of South Africa, although it's still a little bit difficult to do trials over there. You've got Eastern Europe, which is really picking up. There's a lot of companies there looking to land and expand very, very quickly. But the interesting one is Japan. I mean, Japan at the moment, very, very short on senior clinical trials professionals to actually do trials in Japan. India, Asia Pac, lots of stuff going on there as normal. But I think that the big one that's affecting everybody, and if you're not aware of it, be more aware of it, is candidate fraud. So we're looking at now probably, and this is not just individuals, but obviously organised crime, probably around about 15% of all applications are fraudulent in some way, shape or form. And I think that's all being caused because of AI now. It's very clever. You've got bots, you've got people reading from screens, you've got people that are just not even who they are, and different people turning up. And it's very, very difficult to keep on top of this. And there's a whole range of new software processes coming out to try and get that under control. But candidate fraud is a big issue, especially in clinical research, but certainly in pharma as well, when people are not who they say they are. And it's quite difficult to catch them out sometimes. They're getting very clever indeed.
They are indeed. If it's not something you're looking into currently, it's definitely something to start thinking about because ultimately it's going to cost money, a lot of money to fix this issue. So yeah, have a chat internally, see what you guys are doing about it. And if you're struggling with it, come back to us because, we've been speaking to a lot of people about this. We've got some bits and bobs we can share. So please come back to us. So a recruitment outlook then. The most in-demand roles that we saw in Q1, funnily enough, even though they're not doing great, a lot of clinical research roles. We did see quite a lot, didn't we, Vince? Particularly in that sort of bioinformatics kind of area. We also saw a lot in regulatory affairs, as I just said. There's a bit of a boom where it comes to that, particularly here in the UK. AI specialists, as I've touched on, heavily in demand across absolutely everything. Quality. Manufacturing, BD, sales, of course, and MSLs. Those have been the most popular job roles that we've seen not only on PharmaWeb but wider recruitment market as well. Those are definitely where the time and money is being spent. 88% of recruiters are saying that quality of hire focus is really, really needed, but only 19, just under 20% of people can actually measure that effectively. It's a really, really interesting one because ultimately those quality hires are what you want. So finding the techniques, the tools, the things that can gauge that information is going to be business critical for this year, particularly while we're trying to run things lean, mean, and slimmer than ever before. But as we know, we've kind of banged this drum for years. A strong employer brand is going to boost your hiring outcomes. It's not only going to make your outcomes better, it's going to make them cheaper, it's going to make them faster as well. So as much as possible, look at your branding, look at how you're viewed in the market, and work with that from a place to get started. And it all goes back to this. It's, what candidates want. We've been running some sort of quizzes, that kind of thing on Farm. We've got to try and ascertain a lot of this data. Surveys is the word I was looking for that I messed up on. And basically, we've got some results here to share with you. So a lot of people looking to change their job in Q2 is 59% of the people surveyed, 80% of people in 2025 overall. That's a massive amount of people. 95% of people are currently open to recruiter outreach. So even though they're not active job seekers, they're still up for the chat. They're still up for learning a little bit more. 77% of people on the market are not expecting a promotion this year, and that might be why we're seeing such a high number of people looking to job hop. 83% of people really prioritize remote or hybrid working. That flexible work-life balance, it is king. People want to be able to live and work at the same time, not necessarily have to focus too much on one of those things. It's blending them both together. 70% of people really value that work-life balance, a huge amount of people. So if they're a parent, if they're a carer, and they want to be able to do both those things and not pay someone else to do them, they're going to stay with you. They're going to be loyal. 61% of people really prioritize a company's reputation when they're looking for a new role. They will be looking at how the market views you. They'll be looking at things like Glassdoor. They'll be looking at LinkedIn. They'll be looking at all these places where they can ascertain what kind of company you are to work for. So as much as possible, get on top of that. Make sure your people are saying good things on those exit interviews. Vince, you wanted to talk a little bit about the sort of personalized packages, didn't you?
Yeah, so I think a lot of companies at the moment, when I'm talking to them, when they're looking at very specific individuals for certain areas of the business, they'd rather recruit the right person for the role rather than the best person for the role. And what they mean by that is typically when they recruit someone, that person's already doing that job. They've done it. It's fairly straightforward. What they're really looking for now is they're thinking about succession planning. They're thinking about bringing someone up into that role so that they stay longer. When the average tenancy of a role now is around 2.6 years, it does make sense to try and hold people on. And that sometimes includes upskilling people to actually be able to do that role as well, mentoring, whatever they need to actually do well. But going back to what Simon was saying about flexible packages, starting to see a lot more companies thinking about things other than the normal package policies that they have. And it might be actually changing something about the way that someone works or how they can work. If they want the right person, it's what else can you do to get them? Because it might not just be the package and salary. There might be something else that they're looking for or help that they need. One of the clients I was working with just after Christmas made the transition to this, and they've got a lot of personalized packages actually written into the contracts now where people get something different to what they were expecting, and it's really paying off for them. So we'll see how that goes as we move forward. But personalization for individuals where possible, if you're going to recruit 15,000 people a year, obviously you can't do that, but typically most of us are not doing that. So actually to try and get that really good person, just go the extra mile, see what else it's going to take to get them on board.
Absolutely. And, despite what we're seeing in the news, DE&I really does matter to people still. The candidate, their views haven't changed. They're still keen to see what your company is like when it comes to diverse working. They care about your ethics still, and they want to see that transparency from companies, even though it's not kind of deemed necessary anymore as far as the headlines are concerned. The candidate still really, really cares. It's really important to them. We've spent years showing them we can do it, and to turn that off doesn't make us look good. And we're gonna struggle to hire people if that's the way we're going to play the game. On to the next thing, some stats from FarmyWeb. So RQ1, we had just over 11,000 jobs posted on the Farmy website, processed just under 35,000 applications, a load of job alert emails. People have got really, really good at saying, I want to be notified of this kind of job. So we're sending those emails out quite regularly. 4.8 million emails as well, and just under 500,000 site visits. A 35% email open rate on our newsletters too. The newsletters are direct mailers that you can do out to candidates. So to see such a high open rate on those is awesome. And Vince, is there anything to add to this from your point of view?
No, only the fact that bear in mind it was a fairly slow start to the year. We were quite surprised at the level of activity that we're seeing in the market. More importantly, the amount of people that are keen to actually get more of our personalized emails. Again, it's relevant for them and they're actually keen to open it. And we know there's a lot of people in the market that are looking to move in the next quarter. So, be aware of those things. I think anything which is relevant, they're prepared to look at the current time.
Absolutely. So a summary then, everything that we've kind of talked about today. So, we touched on the fact that the Q1 bounced back. It never happened. There are talent shortages as well. Those have been persisting for a while and they persist still. AI is on the up. I feel like that's kind of a given. Funding's been strong in some areas, such as biotech, and weak in others, such as clinical research. The EU really needs to up its investment game in order to keep up with China and the US. Wearables, decentralized in silico trials. The future looks incredibly efficient. We just need to start getting to that point. Employer branding is going to be the focus for 2025, where we're not going to be hiring thousands of people. We might only be hiring 50, 60 business crucial people. We've got to try and win those from absolutely everyone else trying to do the same. This is the year to really, really knuckle down on your employer brand. And remember, 80% of people are looking for a new job this year. So if you're not already looking at your retention as well, that's definitely something to start thinking about. How can we make these people stay? Because to replace people is much more expensive than to keep them. So that brings us to the end of what we wanted to talk about. Obviously, all of this data that we've got here comes from our Recruitment Trends document that we published earlier this month. If you've not already got a copy of it on your inbox, just email us at sales@farmyweb.com. We'll be able to send that document to you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.